in this video, we are making the skull square pants. Say that 5 times fast. Skull square pants, skull square pants. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Tiffany, and in this video, I'm showing you how to make the skull square pants. Oh my gosh, these are so cool and just really fun, really fun. Now, when it comes to this particular project, I'm gonna say that the level crocheter needs to be an intermediate level, hands down. Just everything involved in the skull square itself and then assembling everything together. Yeah, I'm going to say intermediate. You advanced beginners can absolutely give this a try. Feel free to slow down the video if I'm going too fast for you. Remember, you have the power. You can hit the settings of this video yourself on your screen, hit playback speed, and slow me down if you need to. Okay. Also, when it comes to this pattern, this project, all of the terminology I'm going to be using is US terminology. So that just being straightforward so you know exactly what to expect with your stitches. The dimensions for this project. I put a lot of variations and ways to adapt or deviate or manipulate the pattern so that way you can create a pair of pants that's going to fit whatever body size, shape that wants this pair of pants. Okay, there's going to be a lot of things that you can do to make adjustments, and I'm going to show all of that in the pattern. I'm going to show you many different ways to adjust this to fit whoever you're making them for, whether it's yourself or somebody else. Okay, when it comes to pants are really hard when it comes to identifying a specific size because everyone's so vastly different. So I don't really have dimensions for you, but I do have a really nice guide for you in the pattern that you can find on my website, crochetwithtiffany.com. I will have a link in the description section and comment section below this video that will take you directly to this pattern on my website. So you can just go there, purchase the pattern, print it out, and be ready to crochet with me. When you are ready to figure out what materials I used to make these skull square pants, let's go ahead and get started. Materials. What I used to make the skull square pants. I used yarn that is a size 4 weight, worsted, medium, Aran, 10-12 ply, or 8 WPI size yarn, and more like 9 to 12 WPI. We just went over that, so I'm really excited to use that information. So when it comes to the yarn that I love this cotton in the color white and black. I wanted to use cotton yarn, 100% cotton yarn, because I wanted something that would be very comfortable to wear. I didn't want anything itchy, overly warm, like a sweater on your legs. I didn't really want that. I wanted something that would be very breathable, comfortable, and also easy to wash and not break down over time. This cotton yarn is very durable. It does really well when you launder it, especially if you wash it in the gentle cycle. And then really, I would highly recommend you wash these pants gentle cycle, cold in the washing machine, and then just lay them flat to dry. That's what I would do for the longevity of these pants. Don't be afraid to wash them. Just wash them correctly and they will last you a while, okay? And that's why I used cotton. I didn't use Lily Sugar and Cream cotton. I didn't use any of that harsher cotton that's definitely more so for a washcloth. This 100% cotton is very soft. So use your judgment call and feel the materials that you're going to use and ask yourself, is this something I would want to wear? Okay, now feel free to swap this out for something else maybe you have in your stash that's acrylic, or if you have a wool that you really want to play with, use whatever you have on hand, but this is exactly what I used. Now, when it comes to the exact amount of yarn that I used for my project, I can't really give you an exact number. This project is not like a blanket. It's not like a stuffed animal or a set item that there's only one size or a few varying sizes that we can figure out. When it comes to pants, something I discovered right away when trying to figure out sizing is that everybody's body shape and size is completely different. There's so many variations on how long the pants need to be, how wide the pants need to be, even in the thighs or the hips or the calves. So it can really differ for everybody. So what I did in this pattern or this whole tutorial or in the pattern itself is I showed a ton of adjustments that you can make, a ton of alterations that you can make, things that you can do to make the pants that you're making fit. So I have a lot of like, hey, just go off of measurement. Hey, just kind of go off of how you're going to want this to fit, opposed to knowing exactly how much yarn that you're going to need. What I do know is how much yarn you're going to need per skull square. So we can at least start there. So for each skull square, and I put a second border of black around it. In the skull square tutorial I did before, we just did one round border. For these pants, I did 2 rounds of border. So I'm going off of that information so that way the dimensions of each square hit better and more precisely. So for me, each square, I used 19 to 20 yards of white and 26 to 27 yards of black. So not a lot, but plan on making a lot of squares. So go off of that information. In the pattern itself, I'm going to have some layouts of different ways that you can lay out the squares, and you'll be able to count how many squares roughly that you will need in order to make the pants that you want to make. Now again, you can absolutely deviate the pattern however you want to deviate it. In fact, I encourage you to, so that way your pants fit best. Okay, that's the whole goal, is you want them to fit, you want them to feel right. Okay, so that's the yarn. Crochet hook that I'm using is the G6 or 4mm crochet hook. You can also use the 4.25mm crochet hook. It is fine. Don't worry about that at all. Yarn needle, tapestry needle, there's going to be a lot of ends to weave in, believe me. A pair of scissors for a lot of different reasons. Super important, not even optional. Have some kind of measuring tool, whether that is a measuring tape. And this is the retractable version. You can have the regular measuring tape that you have to hand roll. If you have like a yard stick, that would be great. A ruler, I mean, you can use a ruler, but that's going to be extremely tedious. So it can be done, but it's probably the most work material that you could possibly use. But you need a measuring tape, because there's going to be multiple points in this project where I'm going to say, hey, measure this out, or hey, chain to that dimension. I don't have a number to tell you. I don't. So I'm going to be like, okay, measure this and then chain to that dimension. So measuring tape is super important. And then stitch markers. You're going to want to have these on hand, believe me. And if you don't have stitch markers, that's fine. Use the paper clip. Use the safety pin. Use a scrap piece of yarn that you have in your scrap bucket that you can weave through these stitches and then tie a bow so that the project doesn't shift on you when you are joining pieces together. It's going to save your life. So definitely either stitch markers or some kind of way to keep the project pieces from shifting. Big, big deal. All right, so that's it. That's everything that you're going to need to make this project. It's going to be a lot of pieces. There's going to be a lot of things to put together, but you know what? It's going to be amazing. It's going to be so much fun, and I hope you enjoy it. Once you have all of the materials ready to go, let's dive right into actually making these skull square pants. All right, let's begin. I'm going to actually have you start by referencing the skull square video I made a little while ago. I will go ahead and actually put a link in the cards above this video for quick access to this skull. That way you can go back and make this skull however many you need to make the size pants that you want to make. All right, so when it comes to how many squares you need to make for the size pants that you want to make, that's kind of difficult. I did put in the pattern for you a small, medium, large, extra large, and thus ongoing, however many sizes that I could find to reference, and how many skulls I believe you're going to need in order to make that size pant. However, every body shape is different. Some people are really thin but really tall. Other people are really short but wider. So depending on the size pant that you want to make for yourself or for another person, I highly recommend you get their dimensions before you begin. That way you can make the pants fit their body the way they want it to fit. Whether they want the pants to cut off at the ankle or to drag on the ground, everybody likes things a little bit different and everybody's body shape is so incredibly different. So definitely use my sizing chart and how many skulls that I recommend that you create for that size as a guide to get you there. Though having the exact measurements will be your best bet for the best fit, and you may find that you need to make a few extra squares, skull squares, or you may not need to make as many. So I'm going to let you figure that out. Now each square, here's a finished one. This one we're about to work on. So each square measures 7 inches wide by 8 inches long. So I do recommend also that you get a notebook, a pen, pencil, definitely a piece of paper, and taking the person's dimensions, figure out how many squares can fit long ways if it's 8 inches long, and how many squares can fit width-wise either around their waist or around their legs, with it being 7 inches wide. Now to help you out, maybe you don't need a full extra square to meet this person's dimensions. Maybe you just need it to be a little bit wider or a little bit longer. Each round, so you can make as many rounds around the square as you want. Again, another just way of diversifying the pattern. Each round is 1/4 of an inch per side. So each row here is 1/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch plus 1/4 of an inch equals 1/2 an inch. So every time you work around, you are adding 1/2 of an inch to the width and 1/2 of an inch to the length. So let that be a guide for you also, helpful for you also, if you need that little extra bit just to give maybe some extra space, some extra wiggle room in either the waist department or the leg department. That can help. You can also make varying sizes of squares depending on where you put them. Maybe you want the squares in the thighs to be just a little bit bigger than maybe the squares in the hips or the squares next to your calves. You know, you can play with that too to give yourself just a little extra space in certain areas. So also different body shapes. Draw out the image on the piece of paper. Maybe the person has a certain body type that you're trying to accomplish, and just give them the best fit possible. Be smart about it. But hopefully my pattern, the amount of squares that I recommend, I'm going to try to draw some diagrams out to help you as well, will be helpful for you to at least get you started. All right, so when I was creating this square, the tutorial that I made a little while ago, I made 1 round for the border. When I was making these pants, I realized I liked having the 2 rounds more. It really set that dimension more firmly in place of being 7 inches wide by 8 inches long. It wasn't just barely there, it was definitely hitting dimension. So I found that to be very helpful. Also, when it comes to this particular square, it just kind of helped make it look complete. So I really liked adding that extra round. The tutorial that I made before just has the 1 round, but that's fine, it'll get you there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make that second row, or that second round around your square. If you have not cut your yarn of your square yet, you haven't even made your squares yet, then you wouldn't cut your yarn, you would just continue on to round 2. But because I've cut my yarn, I'm going to be adding round 2 onto the project. Okay, so starting in the corner where we started, if you are attaching new yarn, I'm going to find the upper corner, the 3 single crochet stitches, and I'm going to find that middle second single crochet stitch, and that is where I'm going to slip stitch to join my yarn. Slip stitch, then I will chain 1, great, single crochet in that same stitch I just slip stitched into, perfect, then make 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch space across. Be very careful not to count that slip stitch that we made to close round 1. Don't count that as a stitch. That's not a stitch. That is just how we closed round 1. So we're going to go ahead and make 1 single crochet in every stitch across. It's so much faster and so much easier to work round 2 than it was round 1 because we are just working directly into the stitch. Now I'm hoping that you are not necessarily needing to follow along exactly with where my crochet hook is going, just knowing it's 1 single crochet stitch per stitch space. We work that all the way to the other corner, find the 3 single crochets in that corner, single crochet in the first. In that second middle single crochet, make 3 single crochet stitches, 1, 2, 3, turning our work and making our way down the other side, working 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch space all the way across. Now remember, if I am working too quickly, you can always go to the settings of this video. You have full control. Go to the settings of this video, click on playback speed, and slow me down. But again, this shouldn't be anything new. This shouldn't be anything that you really need to pay close attention to. Just know we're making 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch space all the way around. I'm actually going to go ahead and let you go. I'm going to let you continue making the second round all the way around. In each corner, find 3 single crochet stitches, make 3 single crochet stitches in that middle or second single crochet stitch, and then continue working around. I will meet you in this 4th corner to show you how the 4th corner is a little bit different, and then we'll tie it off and weave in our ends. All right, you got this. I'll see you very, very soon. All right, just finishing that round, coming to the very end, the very 4th corner. I'm looking at the 2nd single crochet stitch in that corner. I already have 1 single crochet stitch in this stitch space, and that was the very first single crochet stitch that I made for the entire border. So in this stitch space, I only need to make 2 more single crochet stitches to satisfy that 3 single crochet rule for the corner. So 1, 2, find that first single crochet stitch, slip stitch onto the top of it. There we go, slip stitch, great. Grabbing our scissors, cutting a long enough tail for us to weave in that tail. Then yarn over the tail we just cut, pull through the loop on our crochet hook for a tie off. Great. Now just weaving in our ends real quick. Now while I'm finishing weaving in this end, I just want to mention, when you are creating your skull squares to make for your pair of pants, after you've made each square and made 2 rounds, at least 2 rounds around your skull, weave in all your ends. Weave in the ends before we join the pieces together. That way it's all clean and there's nothing for us to come back to. Nothing worse than making or assembling this whole pair of pants and the inside of the pants is just full of tails, especially in that one section where we changed color from white to black, and it's not completely secure. It's just kind of dangling there until we come back to weave in the end and are able to tie a knot in that space, kind of like I showed you with the skull video. So it's just way better to weave in all your ends. That way you're not having all of those ends and all of that mess to address when we are done joining all the squares together. All right, great. So now I feel confident and comfortable moving forward with you guys and actually laying out our squares together. And you may see I have all of my squares here. It's a lot of squares. Be prepared. It takes a little while to put them all together, but it's so worth it. They're so cool. So this is how I go about laying out my squares before I join. First thing I address is the waist. The waist is where you want to start. You don't want to start with the pants, trust me. So starting with the waist. Now for my particular pattern that I'm following, the waist is 3 squares wide. We can always make the top fit the waist better when we make the waistband and the drawstring. Okay, so we can have these pants be wider and bigger, and keep this in mind when making the pants for yourself or for somebody else. Make the squares for right next to the waist, make sure those are bigger than the person's waist. And again, the waistband that we make and the drawstring will help fit it to the person so they stay on. Now, what side of the work is the front? What side is the back? Look at your border. Look at your border. Look at those V-stitches of your border. One side, those V-stitches are facing forward. You flip it, those V-stitches are facing the back. The side that the V-stitches are facing forward, that's the front of your work. The sides where those V-stitches are facing the back, this is the wrong side or the back of the work. Okay. So I'm going to start with the waist. Now I'll go to the pants, the legs. Okay, so I've got my waist. Now the length. The length of the person that I'm making them for, he wanted these pants to be at least 32 inches. He said maybe a little bit longer. They don't need to be exactly 32. So I'm like, okay, 8 times 4 is 32. So I'm going to go ahead and make it just 4 long, hitting that 32 mark, but I'm going to add a little extra length so it's not cutting off right at the ankles. I'm going to add the extra length in the waistband and on the ankles. So at the very end of the project, I'm going to make a border around the bottom of each pant leg to clean up the bottom, and then you can elongate the pant leg as long as you want from there. I'd rather have the black elongated section be dragging on the ground than any of this white skull anyway. So 4 long. And this is gonna look super short, believe me. You're gonna be like, wait, no. Like, no, they're not that short. No, when I join all these together and then the weight of the material themselves, everything is gonna pull with gravity. So this is actually going to elongate. And then again, I'm going to have a little bit on the end and the waistband as well. Okay, so there's one side, then doubling these up, stacking 2, one on top of another. So one will be in the back, one will be on the front, one will be on the back of the leg, one will be on the front of the leg. Okay. Great. And now I'm going to go with the middle of the leg. I'm going to take a square, I'm going to take the right side, have it face outward, and I'm going to fold it in half this way. So fold it in half that way, cutting the skull in half so it's a complete symmetrical side, and I'm going to lay it flat like that. Line them up. Now for me, this would mean if each width of my squares is 7 inches, that means I'm getting 21 inches around the leg. Keep that in mind. How wide, or what is the circumference of the individual's thigh? What is the circumference of the individual's calf? If you want to add an extra square here, maybe elongate, add an extra square, so maybe it's 2 per leg. Really kind of keep all of that in mind as you are making the piece. You can always measure around the person's thigh. Okay, so this is where I'm at right now. I laid out all of my pieces. The next step would be to join the pieces together. So again, make sure that this is all looking good to you when you're laying it out for how you're going to create it. Make sure all of the measurements, like, okay, that's good for the person, that's good for the person. Okay, maybe this person is super long, but you don't want to add a whole extra skull square. When you're joining these pieces together, maybe you just join these together, and then we will single crochet an extra 2 rounds here, and then single crochet these 3 together, couple rounds on top before we then join. And then they are going to be a little bit longer, and we're adding length throughout the pants. So I'm going to be throwing a lot of ways to deviate this pattern or ways to change up this pattern to meet individuals' needs. I hope this helps and isn't just a whole lot of information for you. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and join. I recommend you start by joining the waist pieces first and then go down joining each round. So waist first, then join these, the first panel first panel, the next panel, okay, we're going to start this way, and then we will join all of these to each other. I'm going to be joining using the whip stitch join. The whip stitch join is a very simple join, and everything will lay flat. For me, I want the skulls to be where the attention, the eye draws. I want everyone to look at these pants and see skulls. I don't necessarily want people to look at these pants and see ridges between squares. I mean, you could do that, honestly. Feel free to use whatever join that you want to use for your pants. They're your pants, so do whatever you want. But for me, I don't want the ridge to steal the attention away from the pants. I want the attention to be on the skulls themselves. So this is what I'm going to do. I have 2 stacks here. I'm going to break up the stacks. And honestly, these are probably going to go on the side here, because this is how I'm going to join. I'm going to join as I'm just going to join 2 and then stop, shift, join these 2, stop, shift, join these 2. That's how I'm going to do it. This is also going to help me avoid having a crazy long yarn tail as I'm joining, because honestly that can get in the way and it can be messy. So making sure my squares are faced, I want to have the wrong side face up. So I'm looking at my squares right now and I see the V-stitches. That means this is the right side. I need to flip it over. I see the V-stitches. That's the right side. I need to flip it over. We want to join with everything facing down. We want to join on the back side of the work or the wrong side of the work for a couple reasons. One, if we mess up, it's on the wrong side, so you can't really tell. 2, it's going to help everything on the other side to lay really flat and pretty. I'm going to come to the bottom corner. I'm going to look for that middle or second single crochet stitch in each corner, and I'm going to insert my yarn needle in and I'm going to join there. So come to the corner, 1, 2, 3, enter in the third from the back forward. Come to this side, find the corner 3, 1, 2, 3. There's the second one from the top down. Making sure there's a long enough tail for me to weave in my end at the end of the project and tie a knot. Perfect. Now here, if you would like to use stitch markers or clamps or anything that you need to make sure that the square doesn't shift on you as you're joining, feel free. I am not going to, but that is definitely a really good trick if joining is something you're worried about, making sure that pieces align the way you want them to. That's a really good tip. All right, so this should technically be a 1-to-1 stitch ratio because these squares are identical. However, make sure you periodically check to make sure that this top middle single crochet and this top middle single crochet kind of stay in line with each other. If you need to make 2 whips in 1 stitch to 2 stitch ratio, whatever, to make sure that this doesn't shift, then do that. Do whatever you need. Same color, so it's going to blend in and no one's going to see it. So I'm going to enter in the next stitch space, find the next stitch space, go from the back forward and pull through. And then come over. Next stitch space, from the front to the back, aligning stitch space, back to the front, pull through, and then yarn over. Next stitch space, front to the back, aligning stitch space from the back to the front, pull through, yarn over. Go ahead and continue doing this. I know it's tedious, it's easy. That's what I'm hoping for, is that it is easy, even though it may be tedious. There's a lot of pieces, but easy is what I'm going for. Continue on. I'm going to meet you at the very end here to show you how I'm going to tie it off, and then that is exactly what we're going to be doing for all of these sections and pieces, how we're moving forward. All right, just finishing up here towards the top. 1, 1. All All right, making sure that second single crochet stitch matches with that second single crochet stitch, and then we're going to go ahead and join those two together. Great. And then I'm going to tie them off. So I'm going to come back through that same second single crochet stitch, back through second single crochet stitch. I'm going to hold this yarn back and pull through, and as I'm pulling, I'm going to hold this back. Then I'm going to take this loop here, I'm going to twist it so I have this X shape, take my yarn needle underneath that loop, and then guide slowly and pull through so I can control where that knot lands. And there we go. And then I'm going to grab my scissors, cut a tail long enough for me to weave in that end right there, and then shift, move on. And if you're curious, Tiffany, how much yarn should I cut? I'm gauging roughly from top to bottom, bottom to top, at least that much. Top to bottom, bottom to top with a little bit left over is good in the sense that I know that there'll be enough yarn and maybe a little bit of scrap left over. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue working, joining, making sure they're all on the wrong side. I don't want to accidentally put a right side in the mix here. It would just kind of affect the look a little bit. You may get away with it, but it could affect the look. So just be cautious, slow down, make sure all of the squares are facing downward so you have all of the backs or wrong sides facing up for us to join with. Join all of the squares for the waist together and then attach them, flip them inside out so you're still joining inside out. Bring them together, join in that second single crochet stitch there, and then join them all the way up when you are finishing the waist. Okay, so that's kind of a rough example of what to do to finish the waist, the round. When you're done with the round for the waist, put the whole waist up and out of the way, come to the thigh or the leg, the thigh, and making sure each piece is wrong side or back is facing up. Join these pieces together, then set this section off to the side, come to the next section, join those. Set them off to the side, join those, all the way down, okay? Make sure all that is taken care of. Then we will come back here and I will show you how to join the legs to the waist. It's a little bit different, especially this first section right next to the waist because we have the leg split there and I want to show you how I do that, okay? So I'm probably going to be in a different outfit because it's going to take me a hot second to finish joining all of these together, but I will see you very soon to show you how we will join that first section of the leg to the waist. This is so exciting. I hope you're excited. We have officially made it to the next step in these pants, these skull square pants. So right now we have currently joined all of the squares lengthwise, and now it's the step where we're going to start attaching the legs to the main torso of the body. And this is where I think some people will get a little confused or just need a little extra guidance. And so I'm going to show you how I do it so that way hopefully it gets you past the step and onto the next step. Now depending on how you laid out your squares and how you laid out your squares for your torso to the leg, so literally we could just kind of like move these. We're really focused right here where the torso and the first row of leg squares kind of meet up. However you aligned your squares here, make sure you align your squares just so that way they can be even, flat on the side unless you're deviating and doing something to kind of like open up the side leg, depending on body shape, how you're adjusting the pattern. And then I recommend stitch markers. And the stitch markers are really going to help us to keep the portions, the pieces together. And it's okay if they wiggle a little bit, but it's going to be important for us to at least know where to stop. And so this stitch marker will at least help us identify the stitch where we will stop. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this side right here. I'm going to attach the stitch markers. Okay, so along the side of the work, that's where I'm going to begin. And I'm going to kind of like just make the squares in line with each other, find the join here on this side, find the join here on this side and attach. Great. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift down a little bit and I'm going to attach where this join is. All right. And lastly is going to be this middle section right here, this join. So this skull square is folded in half, which is fine. I'm going to find where that fold is. There's going to be 2 stitches, 1 stitch on my side, and then the next stitch is on the other side. I'm going to come to where the stitch is on my side and insert my stitch marker there. And then find the center of the skull square. And if you want to, you can even count the stitches. I'm going to leave the bottom ones down. I'm only attaching to the top here because all this is happening on this side. Okay, so now this side is done. Let's go ahead and flip it and continue just attaching this leg portion. I'm going to grab a second color so you can see what I'm doing. Next stitch over. So this stitch has the red marker. Next one over, I'm going to place the blue marker. I'm going to come to this middle square here and count to 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, because that's where I marked off on the other side. Go ahead and mark the middle of the join here with the middle of the join here. Now just to throw this out there, all of these pieces are still inside out. All of the pieces facing upward are all the wrong side or the back side of the work. I'm still working everything on the wrong side. So don't flip everything yet. Don't flip everything and have the right side facing forward. Remember, we can identify the right side from the wrong side by looking at the border. If the border, if you can see those V stitches, then it's the right side. I want those V stitches to face down towards the table, so I'm looking at the wrong side. Okay, and again, we are joining everything inside out, so that way when we flip it inside right, everything lays much cleaner and smoother. All right, and then last stitch marker here, which you don't really need, but I'm going to go ahead and place it anyway. Right there. Great. Okay, so that is how I join. Literally going to close off right in the center of this granny square, this skull square right here. Now I'm not going to attach the next one yet because I feel like by attaching the next leg here, this piece will end up getting in my way. I'd rather just focus on attaching one leg at a time. Okay, so I'm going to begin my join on the outside of the work. Okay, so where these 2 are on the outside of the leg, I'm going to remove my red marker here. And come in, looking for that join here. I'm going to come in from the front to the back of that first stitch that is going straight. Come to the other side of the work, find the adjoining stitch right there, and coming from the back forward, so that way both yarns are kind of facing me when I'm done. Okay, give myself a tail so there's something to weave in. Tie a knot. Great. Now remember, this should be a 1-to-1 stitch ratio, but sometimes depending on how we're joining and how things are moving, shifting, it may not be. So just periodically come back and check, and don't make that periodically be like one time and it's already shifted. Like continuously, like look, check, or whip stitch, check, whip stitch, check. That way, if you do need to add maybe 2 stitches on one side to 1 stitch on the other side, you can do that, and no one's the wiser. No one can tell, especially since we are using the same color yarn to join that is the same color as the border. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make our way all the way to this middle section here. and then I'm gonna meet you here to show you how I'm gonna flip it and continue going on the other side. Okay, I'm right there, coming upon that center. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna flip it, and I'm going to continue on to the other side. Come into the following stitch that has nothing in it, so that has something coming out of it right there. So next stitch over and attaching it to now this side of the work. And because I moved my stitch marker and I didn't count, let me make sure that that is in fact the space. And I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, more, 13. Great. Awesome. And then I'm going to continue working the next stitch and working on this side of the work. Okay, so for this side, we're fine to just go ahead and close up this side of the leg. Come to the end here, make sure that we do one more check to make sure that there are no holes in our work, and then move on. It's when we attach the other side of the leg, or this leg over here, that we will come and make sure that this hole is completely sealed before we move on, so that way there's no gaps in our work. So don't worry about this right now. We will worry about that when we attach the other leg. For right now, let's go ahead and just continue joining these two sections together, and I'll meet you here at this end where we will close everything off and then reattach the other leg. You're doing so good. I hope you're having fun. There we go. Closing this side, making sure that I even extend back over to the other side of the work, because I want to make sure there is no open gap. There's no hole. This is where I'm going to be able to control that. So before I even tie off my work, I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at my join to make sure that I don't have any significant holes, because now is when I can fix that. After this, I'll have to go in and add extra yarn and everything, which might be a bit of a pain. All right, so everything looks great. All right, to tie off my work, I will come into the work, take my yarn needle, come into the work and out. Grab that yarn that's attached to my yarn needle, hold some back so there's a loop. I'm going to twist the loop so that way it makes like this X shape. Take my yarn needle under the loop and pull slowly to guide that knot where I want it. And then I can just release, and honestly I don't need that much yarn for a yarn tail, so I'll trim that a little bit. Okay, next let's go ahead and attach these squares just like we attached the last ones. So let's go ahead and speed through this real quick. There we go, great. Now what you may not have seen me do is right here when I did my join in the middle, I found where I actually had joined the yarn here from the previous join, and I actually inserted my yarn needle in that same stitch that I already have a join in. By making two joins in the same stitch space, I will make sure that these two sections will close that gap. Now I am ready to join and make my way all the way around, doing the exact same thing I did with the other leg hole. Okay, I just got to the center section here, the center join. I want to do this with you so that way you can see how I get through it. So I'm actually going to move this leg kind of open and out to the side. I'm going to come and grab this open stitch space from this panel and join it to this stitch space where this panel is joined to, and close. Then I might even come in the middle here, right in the center of these stitches, and come back to that stitch space that I just entered into, go back in there, come to this panel on this side, this panel, and enter into a stitch space there. Next stitch space that I have my blue stitch marker in, I'm going to enter into that stitch space and come over to the other stitch space where it is joined. Perfect. And make sure all that is closed. going to go ahead and remove that stitch marker. I'm going to look to see where all of this is joined, these 3 pieces, that there are no holes. Everything is closed. And yep, everything is closed. I might even come backwards to the stitch space before the one that I entered into and kind of come across and go diagonal to add that extra close. And now I'm making my way onto this side of the work. Perfect. So again, take as much time here in the middle as you need to make sure that all of these pieces are joined really well, that there are no gaps in the work, and then move on and continue to whip stitch these 2 pieces together. Great, we have just attached one of the most important pieces together, which would be the torso to the first round of the legs. And we were able to actually kind of make them pants. I mean, in a sense, these are now shorts. Shorts. So now we have the 2 leg holes and they're joined in the center and they are essentially shorts. What we can do moving forward now is just continue to join along. Use your stitch markers if you need to, just to make sure everything doesn't shift. We want to keep these lines in line with each other, just so that way everything is in sync when it comes to the appearance of these pants. If you really want to go rogue and you want to kind of like have these skulls be offset, you can do that too if you would like to. Personal preference, whatever you want to do. But for me, I would personally want to keep everything in line with each other. That's how I would want to do it. Now, like I said, you've already done the measurements. You already know how many skull squares you need lengthwise for the person you're making these pants for, how they will fit best on their leg. Now for me, the person I am making this pair of pants for, their pant size was 32 inches long. Now if you recall, each of these squares is 8 inches. That means a perfect 4 squares in a row should hit 32 inches. But I don't want these pants to hit right at the ankle. I want these pants to drag a little bit, be a little more comfy cozy in a sense. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a round between these pieces being joined. And to show you, just to show you how to do that as well, if you're finding you need to add just a little more length to your project. So grab your crochet hook, grab your yarn that you used for your border. I'm gonna go ahead and fold those, put those off to the side real quick. Starting with the tail, long enough for me to weave in any ends, slip knot, crochet hook. Great. Coming to the work, I'm gonna find one of the join sections. That way all of these tails are together so I can weave everything in together. Going to insert my crochet hook right between that join, right in the middle, and slip stitch to attach the yarn to the work. Chain 1, and I'm going to just make 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch space and 1 single crochet stitch in the join space as well. So when we are working a border around these joined squares, we want to make sure we make 1 single crochet stitch where it was joined together so that way everything is smooth and nothing crumples up. We want everything to continue to lay flat. Super important. So single crochet where I just joined, making 1 single crochet stitch across. Now remember, each row or each round of stitches measures out to be 1/4 of an inch tall, or covers 1/4 of an inch. So if I can add just this, and then I'm going to personally add 1 extra round between each set. So I'm basically adding 2 more rounds here, and that should get me an extra 1/2 inch. And that will help so that way when I make the top of the pants and the border around the bottom of each leg. I'm not having to make those incredibly long. And if you want to, you could also make a border around both sides of the section. So a border here and a border, one extra border here, and then one extra border here, one extra border here, and every two is a ½ inch. So if I were to make an extra border here, and then an extra border here, I would essentially be adding an inch extra length to these pants. So little trick there if you need to do that. And I'm going to try to quickly make it to one of these joins so that way I can show you how I work across the join, just so you can feel confident if you want to do this step. So this tail right here, that is where that join is. So stitch, last stitch, and then I'm going to place a stitch right in that join. Boom, and then continue, keep going. And that's going to make everything lay smooth and lay flat. And done. Perfect. Slip stitching into the top of that first single crochet stitch that I made for this border to close the border. Grabbing my scissors, cutting a long enough tail for me to weave in that end. Yarn over, pull through for a tie off. Perfect. Okay, so that is how I add an extra round on top of my sections to give the legs a little more length. And of course, feel free to add as many as you want, really, or choose a different joining method if you would like to elongate the legs differently with a different joining method. That could be a lot of fun too, especially if you did like a fun zigzag or V-stitch across. That would be really, really cool. But what I'm gonna have you do now that I've shown you how to do this, I'm going to let you continue on with your project how you see fit for the joining process. What we're going to do is we're going to attach all of these sections to the legs. Do whatever you got to do. If you need to add extra rounds, that's all up to you. When we have joined all of these pieces together, we will come back here and we will start working on the top of the pants with this, I want to say like waistband for the belt. So that's what we are going to be working on next. I'll see you in a second for you, but in a little while for me. I hope this is all making sense, and I hope you are enjoying the process. Guys, we have just finished joining all of these skull squares together, and look how amazing these pants look. Oh my gosh, this looks so cool. I'm so incredibly excited about it. This is so great. Ah, I'm so excited. Okay, so the next thing we're going to tackle with these skull square pants is the waistband. And I want to tack the waistband next because the waistband is going to add length to the pants. And I want to make sure that I account for this first and then continue adding length to the legs as needed instead of vice versa and having the legs be too long, if that makes sense. So when it comes to the waistband, really for me, I have only one square one square long before we get to the join here in the middle for the legs. So this is really, really short. I'm going to let you deviate and determine how wide you want this waistband to be. If you just want it to be really short and have these pants be low ride, or if you want to make this waistband really long. And if you want to, guys, if you really would, for comfort reasons, like to add a whole other square on top here and almost have like a high waist kind of thing going on for your school pants, go for it. For me, I'm going to make a waistband that is 4 inches tall on top of the top skull. So my waistband is going to be about 4 inches all the way across. And how I'm going to make that waistband, I'm going to actually make the waistband separate from the pant. I'm not going to attach, or I'm not going to crochet the band onto the pant. I'm going to crochet it separately and then attach it to the top of the pant. What I'm going to be making is a single crochet back loop only band. So I'm just going to throw that out there right now. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to start with a tail long enough for me to weave in at my end, at the end of that project, create my slip knot, using the same crochet hook that I used to make all of the squares and all throughout this entire project. I want my waistband, like I said, to be 4 inches tall, but I'm going to be taking this waistband thing and I'm going to be folding it in half so I have a tunnel for the belt to weave through at the end, so that way I have something to like secure at the top and keep the pants on. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go ahead and grab my measuring tape. If I want my waistband to be 4 inches tall and I know I want to flip it over, then that means I need to make a rectangle that is 8 inches. So when I fold it in half, it's 4 inches. I'm going to get that by chaining 30 chains. Now, if you want to do a different waistband, maybe you want yours much shorter, maybe 2 inch tall, then you're going to want to make something 4 inches. So when you fold it in half, it's 2 inches. And if you want to make something significantly long, just remember to double that number so we can fold it in half. And you're going to be chaining to get to that number. So if I want a 4 inch tall waistband, I need 8 inches, and 30 chains gets me right there. All right, so for row 1, we're going to single crochet in the second chain from our crochet hook and make 1 single crochet stitch in every single chain all the way across. Great. Okay, so that right there leaves me with 29 stitches, 1 less than how many chains that I chained. Gonna come back here, remeasure to make sure I'm still in line with what I want it to be. And I am right there. Awesome. Okay, for row 2 through whatever row that I'm about to tell you to make, we are just going to chain 1 and then single crochet in the back loop only of every stitch all the way across. That is going to be the repeat pattern for the rest of this waistband. By making the single crochet back loop only stitch, is 1, going to be comfortable. 2, it's going to have this ability to expand and contract, kind of a little elastic without being elastic, and it will just kind of work really well with the pattern to take this waist that we have that is so incredibly long and kind of bring it in a little bit. So we want to give this a little more structure and have it kind of come in a little bit more. So how do we figure out how many rows we need to make when it comes to all these back loop onlys we need to make? Every single skull square has 27 stitch spaces on the top of it. I counted. So that means you're going to need to take 27 times how many skulls you have in the waist here. I have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to do 27 times 6, and my number comes out to 162. So I'm going to need to make 162 rows of single crochet back loop only, and then I can stop, and then we will be able to attach this waistband to the pants. Okay, now you do the same math. You figure this out. I can't really do this for you because I don't know how you deviated the waist. But just do this, 27 times, then how many skulls you have in the waist, and that is how many rows you need to make back loop, single crochet back loop only. All right, so go ahead and continue working your single crochet back loop only rows until you have reached that row, that last row, to make it around the waistband of your pants. When you are done, I will meet up with you and we will together finish off the waistband and then create the belt. You guys are doing amazing. Thank you so much for doing this project with me because I'm having a blast and I hope you are too. Before I move forward with the waistband, I wanted to pause and mention if your granny squares, your skull squares that you created, if you added more borders than I did for more width of your project, then don't go off of the 27 stitches that I said ran along the top. Really count the number of stitches that ran across the top of the skull square itself, remember we're not counting the space where we joined the squares. We would count that if we did a single crochet border around everything. But in this case, because we're trying to cinch up the top to kind of hug the hips and not be so boxy, we're gonna go ahead and just take away that stitch space and help everything start to bunch a little bit. Okay, I just wanted to be clear with that. I realized after I recorded that section that I didn't account for if anyone made any variations. Okay, so I have just finished making my band, my waistband. What I'm gonna do next is I'm actually going to measure it. Just lay it flat, nice and flat. Grab your measuring tape and measure the length. Don't stretch it out, just kind of let it lay naturally, let it be. Okay, measure. I have approximately 38 inches here in the waistband. Next, we're gonna make the belt. We're gonna actually set this off to the side and we're gonna make the belt. We need to know how long the waistband was because we need to make the belt longer than the waistband. I am personally going to add 20 inches to my waistband for the belt. So you would come over, you would write down, so I measured out 38 inches. I'm gonna add 20 inches on top of that, so that way my belt is 10 inches longer on one side and 10 inches longer on the other side, so that way I can tie a bow or tie a knot or have enough space there to really cinch and tie and hold. Just make sure that you measure out how long your waistband measured out, so that way you can make your belt longer than that measurement. That's the key. What we're gonna do for the belt, now that we know how long we want it to be, we're gonna take, I'm gonna make my belt with the white color, same crochet hook, the G6, 4mm crochet hook. I'm gonna pull out my tape measure and I'm going to come up to the number I want. So I want 58. So I'm gonna go ahead and stretch that out, lay that out. So what I can do next is take my yarn and chain to this length. If I have this already out, then as I'm chaining, I can lay it across the measuring tape and see how I'm doing with the measurement, if I've reached measurement, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna start by long enough tail for me to weave in my end, slip knot, crochet hook, and then chain. And there is no number. There's no set number because there's too many variations that we could do, okay? Really just kind of go off the measuring tape. You can't go wrong. There is no wrong number. Even if you're a little bit shorter than the number that you calculated, your belt, we've already calculated that our belt will be longer than the waistband. So you're okay. You're fine. So just keep chaining until you meet that dimension. Now for me, I'm not gonna chain 58 chains. I already did that once. I've already pre-created the belt. I ended up having to chain 210 chains in order to meet the dimension that I wanted. You may not need that many. Honestly, I think my belt may be just a tad bit long, but I'm okay with that. I would rather have my belt be too long than too short. Error on too much there for me, but you may not need anywhere close to 210 chains. So I already made my belt. I'm just gonna now show you how I went ahead and made the belt. So you're gonna chain until you meet your dimension, okay? For row 1 of our belt, we're going to single crochet in the second chain from our crochet hook. So 1, 2, single crochet. Row 1 is just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch space. We're gonna keep it simple, okay? In fact, this whole belt is going to be extremely simple. And depending on how long your belt is, this might take you a second. Perfect. Row 2, chain 2, 1, 2, turning our work. For row 2, I'm going to make 1 double crochet stitch in every stitch space all the way across, starting with the very first stitch space. That chain 2 does not count as a stitch for me. I'm not going to do that to you. I don't want any gaps. in the work here. Row 3 is the last row for our belt. We're just going to chain 1, turn our work. Row 3 is just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch space. So we start with 1 single crochet, or single crochets, then double crochets, and then single crochets. Just kind of making it structured, giving it a little width so it has some grip, has some hold to it. When you get to the end of your belt, just tie everything off. Long enough tail for you to weave in the end. Yarn over, pull through the loop on your crochet hook, pull tight for a tie off, and then weave in your ends. Right now we're going to take a second, weave in the ends for your belt, weave in the ends on your waistband so we can move forward. Next thing we're going to do is really the fun part here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of you. Okay, we're going to lay our waistband flat on the table. Grabbing our belt we've already created and laying the belt directly in the middle of our waistband. And it doesn't matter if the sides are equal or not, because this will be able to shift and move. Then we're going to take the top of our waistband and we're going to fold it in half. Now remember, me personally, I just wanted a 4-inch tall waistband, but I wanted to do this fold over method so that way the belt could freely move and it would be very comfy, cozy, and feel really nice when you wear it. It will also help if you want to do that baggy, slouchy look. This will help grip around your hips and not do that weird flare thing. It's hopefully going to help just kind of bring it all to the top so that way it's hugging your hips at the top and then draping the rest of the way. That was the look I was going for. Okay, perfect. Okay. We are now ready to attach our waistband to the top of our pants. So grabbing your skull pants, bringing them down to the waistband. Awesome. First, we want to identify the very center of the front of the pants. So we're going to need stitch markers. Grab your stitch markers. Let's use orange. Orange will be a fun color. First, identify the center. So finding my middle skull, marking it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the black part of my waistband and we're going to keep the white belt on the inside. We want to start attaching the waistband to the waist with stitch markers. That way we can at least keep the waistband from shifting on us. The worst thing that can possibly happen, which isn't the end of the world, but the worst thing that can happen is as you're joining this waistband to the waist, that when you get to the end, all of a sudden you have like 6 inches of waistband still to attach and you're like, uh-oh, or not enough and you're left with like 4 inches of nothingness because you've attached everything. We don't want that. We already counted how many stitches go around. We're already accounting for the fact that we did not include the stitch that would be in the middle of the join of the squares. So we already have that accounted. Best thing you can do is go ahead and take this stitch space. Here, I'm going to go ahead and use the same stitch marker. Find the 2 corners here. Go through the very corner of the first side and then bring over the corner of this side. Great. So now I have this attached right there. Grab this side using the stitch marker that's already there. Awesome. And going through both corners. That's going to be the hardest thing for joining this waistband to the waist, guys. Be cautious that you're going through both sides of the waistband and not just one. So don't speed through this. take your time with it. Okay, great. And I might actually, when I come to the end here, I might, when I join these two together, I'll make sure there's no gap and everything is cleaned up there. Okay, so obviously my waistband is shorter than my waist. I know this. About an inch on this side, an inch on this side gap. So what's great, because this single crochet back loop only creates this accordion kind of coming in vibe. If I stretch it out, it will meet that corner. So making sure that everything is even. If you want to count, you can. So every ridge is 2 rows. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40. Like 42 is sticking out here. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42 is this ridge here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that ridge and this corner, and in the very corner, right in the middle of the join, poke through with my stitch marker and come through the 42nd for me, because that's what I counted was even on each side. So now I have that on the side good to go. Come to the other side, right in the middle of the join. Okay, so now I have the middle here, good. I have my sides, good. If you want, you can even go ahead and attach in the middle here by going in the half, 50% this way, so counting in this way, 50% this way, counting in this way for it to be even. Definitely come on the back, attach the back, and remember, this is super important, so definitely don't skip this step. Don't just dive into it, because I promise you, you will end up having to backtrack a little bit and redo something because something will shift. Okay, so those are even right here in the middle. Don't have to necessarily count on the back, just kind of make sure everything lays flat. Make sure everything's in line. Nothing is fighting us at this point, so we don't have to worry about shifting right now. Feel free to add as many stitch markers as you want. Seriously, rather be safe than sorry. Okay, come to the front. Awesome. Great. I'm so excited, guys. We're so close. We're so close. Now, important, have the belt be on the inside. It just saves you a whole extra step of having to feed it through after you've attached all the pieces. I mean, it just is extra convenient for you. If you don't want to have the belt in there right now, I get it, that's fine. But for me personally, it just makes it so much easier. All right, taking our yarn needle or tapestry needle, grabbing, I'm using the black. If you want to use a different color, I get it. However, if you can use the same color that you used for the waistband and for the outer part of the skull, that is most ideal, because then you can literally make as many mistakes joining the section or go over as many stitches or have things cross over or just not necessarily be neat and pretty, and no one's going to be the wiser because it's all the same color and you can't, it's going to camouflage. Again, all of our work is still inside out. We haven't flipped anything inside right yet, so we're still working on this inside out. So I cut my yarn instead of having a really long attachment to my skein, so that way I can tie off the knot so it doesn't shift on me, and I can just go and use up this yarn, and when this is gone, I'll reattach more yarn. So I'm going to come to where this stitch marker is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my yarn needle, go into the same stitch space that my stitch marker is in. Okay, then I'm going to go to, I can remove my stitch marker at this point. Now that I've marked that space, go through the corner stitch on that side, go through the corner stitch on this side, feed through, leave behind enough yarn for you to weave in that tail and tie a knot. And this will secure everything so we can move forward and not worry about the yarn slipping through. We're good. Okay, then I'm gonna do the whip stitch. So I'm just gonna come back down to the work, next stitch space over, enter my yarn needle, come to the waistband and insert my yarn needle through that way. And then come over into the waist and then into the waistband. Through and then over the top. Now, like I mentioned just a second ago, this does not have to be a 1-to-1 stitch ratio. In fact, it won't be because we didn't account for the stitches that we would put in the join, like I've mentioned a couple times. So if you want to just go ahead and focus more on making sure that your stitch marker doesn't move, that it's still in that same stitch space that we want it to be, just feel free to eyeball and go. It does not have to be a 1-to-1 stitch ratio. You can even go backwards if you want to and be like, nope, I'm gonna go back and extra secure that there. I don't think I secured that well enough, and so on and so forth. Be very cautious though, if you move faster, that you are getting both sides of this waistband and not just one. Again, that would suck. Okay, so I think you're good. We have the position. We have everything marked off. We have everything clamped down with stitch markers. I just told you what to do. Go ahead and now move forward. I will now meet you here when we finish off the waistband to show you what we do next. Don't tie anything off. Don't finish here. Just stop here, and that's where I'll meet you to show you what happens next. All right, just finished attaching my waistband. Now we're going to go through, before we move forward, let's go ahead and double check to make sure there are no gaps, there are no holes. Now is the time we can either go back and fix that, or we can fill that in now. We want to take care of that now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull my waistband away from the waist all the way around to make sure that, again, no holes, no gaps, secure, that on both sides I managed to grab both sides of the waistband, and that I didn't accidentally miss and only pick up one side. All right, we're good. Great. Next, what we're going to do, because we're still looking at the back of this work, I'm going to take this split. So this wide open split is not very appealing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two belt straps towards the center of the work. I'm going to align these to the top, and I'm going to grab a stitch marker and I'm going to attach the top of this join together right there at the very top. So you can see a little hole here, joined right there at the top. Taking my yarn needle, we haven't tied anything off. We are still very active here in our join. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to join this side, just this side of this waistband together, so it'll be closed, but we're going to leave the front side open. So the front will still be open so we can adjust the belt as needed, but we're closing the back side. This will also help us to close that stitch gap that was here in the waistband. Still doing the whip stitch, back and forth. Right here with the first one, I see a little hole. See that little hole right there? So I'm going to go ahead and go into the work, into the waistband, come into this stitch, and kind of go back where I came from and close that up. So when I stick my finger there, there is no more hole there. So again, it's great that we're using the same color, so that way if we can go zigzag, we can go diagonal back forth, and it's not going to be obvious what we did because it's all the same color, just camouflages in. There we go. Last stitch there. Okay, look at your work. Any holes, anything you want to come back and address, anything you want to tighten. If you're good, double check real quick before we tie this off that you didn't accidentally attach or sew the other side closed, and I am good. This is all open. So I am going to go ahead and tie off right here at the very top. Awesome. Guys, we're on to the very last step. I'm so excited. Okay, waistband done. We're still inside out. Last thing we're going to do is just add a border to the bottom of each leg. Now, not only are we adding a border, but this is also a great point where we can add a little extra length to the leg if you would like. If you want something that's a little more baggy and drapey on the bottom and you want to just have some more length here so that way it kind of crumples up around your foot on the floor, or they do, whoever you're making them for, and you don't want them to hang like right at the ankle, you can add as many rows or rounds as you want to the bottom, and this is completely up to you. Or if you want, if this is already, with adding the waistband, it's already hitting a length that you want, you maybe added a whole other row of skulls. So you're like, I already have so many skulls, my pants are already long enough. And then go ahead and just make a single crochet border around the bottom, like exactly like we did between, or I showed you between these rows when attaching. Just do that at the bottom and close it off. But if you would like to add an extra length, which I think I definitely want to do, I am going to slip stitch into the side of the work where there is a join right there. So right in the join, I'm going to insert my crochet hook, slip stitch to attach the yarn to the work, and then I am going to chain 2. 1, 2. I'm going to go ahead and make a double crochet stitch in every stitch space all the way around. Again, I'm adding length. If you don't want to add length, you just want to add a pretty border to clean everything up, just do a single crochet stitch, just chain 1 and make 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch around. I want to add length, so I'm going to do a double crochet stitch. So I chained 2. I'm going to make a double crochet stitch in the same stitch space that I just slip stitched into, and then continue making 1 double crochet stitch in every stitch space around. Now remember, we do count the join between the squares. We add a stitch right there at the join. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick. I am going to meet you back up, or meet back up with you when I have gone all the way around here and how I move forward. I do continuous rounds. I do not do slip stitch and then chain to the next row for this particular project. I kind of want to hide those. I don't want a very obvious changeover when I move on to the next round. Just made my last double crochet stitch here. You can see how I'm ready, or right next to where I began the round. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to continue making a double crochet stitch on the very first double crochet stitch. I'm going to skip that chain 2. I'm going to ignore it altogether. So finding that first double crochet stitch, and I'm going to double crochet and continue on. Now I'm going to pause though real quick. I'm going to grab a stitch marker. I'm going to place that stitch marker in that first double crochet stitch I made for the second round, so I know where to stop. It's just a good indicator right there. And I'm going to continue making 1 double crochet stitch in every stitch space all the way around. Now for me, I'm just doing 2 rounds of border here, and then I'm going to stop. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working round 2, and then I'll meet back up with you here where I'm ready to stop round 2 and finish off this pant leg. All right, and I'm right at my stitch marker here. I'm going to go ahead and move that. And I'm going to slip stitch into that stitch that I had my stitch marker in. Slip stitch right there. And by doing that, it really helps to close and make this look really flat and even. See if you can see that? Look at that. Very nice, very nice. And then if this hole right here bothers you, when we are weaving in all of our ends here, you can just go ahead and attach or join those together and close that hole, close that gap. Not a big deal at all. So I'm done. That's all I wanted to add to the bottom of my pant leg. And to be honest, I like having more black be on the bottom of the pant leg opposed to having any white on the bottom of the pant leg, because white can get really dirty really fast and black is more forgiving. So cut that off, tie off the work. Awesome. And just repeat on the next pant leg. Boom, just finished cutting a tail, tying off the work. We're done! We have just finished making a pair of school square pants. We're done! Oh my gosh. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, guys, is I'm going to turn these inside right and then show you a few modeling pictures of me wearing them. All right, guys, please let me know in the comment section. I am dying to hear, what did you think of this pattern? What did you think of assembling all of the squares together? The different variations to meet different comfort levels, different shapes, different sizes. Did it all make sense? Did you enjoy this video? I hope you did. Thank you so much for watching. If you had fun with this video, please do all the things. Like this video because it gives me information. It tells me that you did enjoy this video, so it's a big deal. Please like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. I have some amazing videos coming out, more fun projects. I have different tips and tricks for you. I have giveaways coming up. Come on, guys, this is gonna be so much fun. You're not gonna wanna miss out, so make sure you're subscribed. Check out my membership program if you'd like a little bit more out of my channel. I have a couple different levels there for you to take a peek at. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, crocheting with me and making something amazing. Because like you know, don't just crochet something to crochet something. Make a memory. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Bye.